Hello, welcome to Practical Biz Podcast. This is your host, Erica Sicosio, and I have a great guest tonight who's going to talk to us a little bit about communication and build on our last episode on customer retention. And both of us being in the service industry, we hope that we're going to be able to bring you some really great tips and strategies that you'll be able to use right away. But first, I'm going to ask my guest to introduce himself and tell us a little bit about how he got to where he is now.
Hey, it's great to be here today. I'm Ron Nussbaum. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Nutnest. And after spending over a decade in the construction industry, from digging the hose to running the company, I got tired of hearing communication sucks and decided to do something about it. So that's what led us here today to having this conversation. And I'm so glad to be here and add value to your listeners and everyone out there.
Yeah. So we appreciate you being on. And like you, communication for us, I don't know if you know, I also own several childcare industries, several childcare programs, and communication is key for both you and for me in our industries. Because if there isn't good communication, somebody could really get hurt, right? So,
Yeah.
and like you, I started from the bottom up, started as a bus driver and a van driver and a TA, and many years later, I now own several childcare programs. So there was a quote I really liked, and it was from James Holmes, and he said, "The art of communication is the language of leadership." And I thought, that really resonated with me because, great leaders have effective communication skills. And a lot of times that's, one of the traits that brings them into leadership. And it's really not the title, but the skill set that you have that brings you to that place. So, and the other thing too, I think, effective communication is so important in the workplace in terms of it increases productivity, it increases engagement with your employees and your customers. It certainly increases customer retention and retention of your employees, and also builds trust. And right now, so many employers are having a hard time keeping their staff or finding quality staff. And then, obviously, we all want to retain customers to our very best ability. And a lot of times it's the communication that doesn't happen that causes a problem for your customer, and how things fall through the cracks. So what you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, absolutely. The number one rule that I have with communication and what I always go to is clarity. You have to lead with clarity in communication. It doesn't matter what you're doing, or if you're having a conversation with a significant other or an employee or a partner, you have to lead with clarity and being clear, especially when a lot of industries have their own lingo and dialogue that they use. Customers don't understand that. And when you're talking with a customer, you want to make sure you're clear on what your expectations are and have clarity in that communication. And I think that's the root of creating an environment where people have good communication, is that being honest, setting those expectations from day one and saying, hey, I'm just going to clearly state what is happening, what I expect to happen at this point in time in the process. And having that open dialogue between the two creates good communication.
Yeah. And it's funny too when you kind of said, when you went back and you said, oh, communication is, as you said, sucks. Communication really is more than a two-way street. But I think, I try to explain this to my staff sometimes. I'm like, communication isn't just me talking to you. It's also me receiving the information and you receiving the information. And like you said, clarity. If you're not sure on something, ask. Don't sit there and say, yeah, I got it, and then you go back and you don't really have it. So I think that that's important too. And sometimes I might, after I talk to somebody, say, tell me what I said, because I have to make sure that they understand the information, because what you think you heard might not always be what somebody is saying. So you're right, the clarity, especially on, a job where somebody is picking something out. You might need, there might be many variations of that kind of tile or of that kind of concrete or, whatever the particular service or product is.
Yeah, all too often, just like what you were talking about with employees, we have a communication breakdown before the communication even stops. So we're in the middle of talking, boom, a breakdown's happened because there's not clarity. Either the employee or the customer don't understand what you're saying, or you're just not clear with your intentions going forward. And that creates that breakdown. And that's why, to me, that is the start of everything. Is if you can't have clarity in your communication, it's just going to fall apart from there.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too, which is I'm assuming is why you put the app together, is there's so many tools that people use now to communicate, right? So are we communicating via email, phone, face to face, an app? Like there's so many different ways. And a lot of times face to face is probably, in my opinion, for me, because I'm very interpersonal, is the better way because I can read somebody's body language, tone, I can tell whether they're really understanding me or not. And I find sometimes with email or text, there's a breakdown because you miss that piece. I see you smiling. You know what I'm talking about. You sometimes miss that piece because you can't really read all the parts that we as humans are used to using to communicate.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings me to my second thing that you have to have with communication is a singular platform. If you're not talking face to face, you have to be clear on what platform you're going to use because of what you just said is we live in a world where you have WhatsApp, email, Facebook Messenger. I've even seen deals happen on Instagram Messenger. So we're not having clarity around where exactly you're going to communicate with each other if this isn't happening in person is a major roadblock. And that is one of the reasons why I created the platform is to allow customers and contractors to have that singular point that was designed for the industry. Being that I spent over a decade in the construction industry, I have an understanding of how that process works. So we've designed something that is specific for communication in the construction industry. But exactly what you're saying is so true.
Can you design one for childcare?
So I have already been approached by the medical
I
field.
bet you have, right?
Yeah, for what we're doing. My background's in construction, so we're trying to get as much momentum and roll it out in the construction industry. But there's a lot of pivot points that this can be used for with just a few changes to kind of how the platform works because it's very specific to the construction industry.
Yeah.
But being able to change it so, say somebody in the childcare can have that direct communication with parents as well as staff is,
Yeah.
I like to say, we're air traffic control for contractors. So
Yep.
any kind of business that could use that direction, we could possibly pivot into.
Yeah, so there are a lot of apps for my industry in general, but I have like 3 locations. So I don't have one certain way that I could just very quickly talk to all 42 of my staff at once. So we have a Facebook group. We'll typically use that, but not all of my employees use Facebook. Most of them do, but not all of them do, or some of them are on more frequently than others, so they miss memos and things like that. We've tried everything. You type up newsletters or memos, you staple them to paychecks, but now everybody has automatic deposit. So they don't even barely pick up their paychecks anymore. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I think it is probably communication for small business and large business is something that's so critical. But yeah, trying to figure out what's the best way to reach everyone where they're at and everybody be able to kind of interact with each other in that one space. So definitely can be a challenge. Also, I think, when we talk about communication, talk about the information's got to be correct. It's got to be not only clear, but, you know, because if not, you end up with like the telephone game. Here's what I thought I heard at the meeting, right? And it ends up, I'm like, that's not what I said. So that's nice that you have that platform where everybody can. So tell us a little bit more. Like, is it just it's written? Is it written in audio? Tell us a little bit about like how it's set up.
So from a homeowner's perspective, the customer, it's a mobile app download, and when you go in there, I like to say it's like Facebook, Instagram live feed, but for a project on your house. So you can look right in there. You can see any communication that you've had, whether it's messenger back and forth, or we have video and photo options as well in there to be able to have those updates. But you'll be able to go in there and see exactly what's happening on your project, when somebody's showing up at my house, what was my last communication like, get that clarity so you're on the same page, and then also have those records so you know what that communication looked like. Because what you just said, stuff can change. Somebody can say, hey, I'm going to be there at 3 o'clock, and somebody can hear, I'll be there in 3 hours. And then that's where miscommunications start to happen. But
Yeah.
having all of that go through the same channels, instead of having, say, a phone call, text message, uh, email, all happening at different times with different information, we allow that customer to be able to control their project from a singular location, which then creates more efficiencies for the contractor, because now they're dealing with a customer that is asking the appropriate questions. They know what's going on. So when that contractor shows up at the house, the homeowner's there, or at least has a plan in place for them to be able to get into the house.
Yeah. So for the small business owners that are listening, because that's typically who listens to our podcast, our point, I guess, is even if there isn't an app right now for your industry, you do have to create some type of singular place where everybody is funneling their information in one place so that everybody is on the same page. Because what happens is if you do have poor communication, it will cause delays in either getting out a product or a service. It also can cause you extra expenses, which can be certainly a headache and very troublesome if you're just starting, because usually your resources are limited, not only money, but your time. And then causes frustration for both you and the customer. So I think that that's really important. And for those of you who maybe have employees, I would say probably if you don't have good communication in your business, it causes a lot of frustration for your employees. Yeah.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that, because that's that ripple effect of having bad communication with your customers, probably having bad communication with your employees, and then those two are combining. Neither one of them are happy. That creates problems and tension in the business. And all anybody wants is just that good communication. So the customer knows what's going on, the employees want to know what's going on, and then your business can efficiently run and be very effective.
Yeah. And also the other thing too is it also shows respect for your team, and it gives them a way to give you feedback back, right? Because again, communication isn't the boss talking to the employees all of the time. It is that two-way, that two-way communication. And I also feel like with leadership, like that communication can come from anywhere. It doesn't have to be the boss who initiates it, right? A lot of times my staff will be like, hey, I think we might, we could this could be a potential problem, right? And I'm sure
Yep.
you probably have found that too in your
Yeah,
industry.
one of the amazing things that we've found with our software is we've given back the customer some control, because one of the biggest complaints you hear in the construction industry is they don't call me back. I'm never talking to the right person. It's hard to get a hold of people. Well, with that air traffic control that we direct that communication to the right people at the company every time. So when that customer picks up the phone and they have a scheduling question, they're calling the person that can answer those questions, or they're messaging that person via the Nutnest platform. And by doing that, that customer is now more able to reach out, because they feel, hey, I know I'm going to get a hold of somebody. I'm going to get an answer. So they're now asking questions that before they would have said, I'm just going to wait. We'll figure it out when they get here. And then no communication happens. And then a bigger problem ends up happening from that. So you're kind of giving some of that control back, which is exactly what you're talking about with the employees. And that starts to happen when you start giving consistent updates and you start making sure you're on the same page with what the expectations are and when you're going to update communication, because people do want to be in the loop.
They do. I do think too that when you share information, it also inspires and puts growth in your team. So even, people at the entry level, they're in the same communication as people mid-level, high level. And I think that that really instills people's, motivation to grow within a company too. I think, they feel like they are a part of something bigger than, being the TA or the guy who drops off the concrete, right?
Yeah, and if there's one thing I've learned in however many years of business at this point in time, is that no matter what you say, that entry level position, they're going to eventually hear it in one form or another. You might as well just say it clearly how you want it to be said, than try to keep that. We have a tendency to keep stuff kind of hush hush, or like this is certain levers that we can have these conversations, but stuff that affects the company, I think you're better off just having that communication and being upfront, providing that clarity, because you are going to get that ripple effect where stuff gets way escalated as it gets down. And you know the information can completely change from a conversation that you have with an executive to where it gets down. If it's information that needs to be distributed through the company, a lot of times as a leader, you're better off just delivering it.
100%. So this might sound funny. So we do a strategic planning meeting with our company every year. Now, I know most companies don't. We literally do it yearly. We take 4 hours on a Saturday where we're not at work. We rent a hotel conference space, and we literally, as a group, say, this is where we're going. This is, where we are now. These are our goals. This is what we're doing. Here's your part in it. And we hash stuff out. So I feel like that is one way to keep your business moving forward, is to have that not only daily conversation, but that bigger planning conversation with your employees on a very regular basis. And I feel like that really just makes happy employees, which then makes happy customers. So we'll talk a little bit about that. I know I kind of went in the direction of employees, but I just think that that's something that's such a challenge for many business owners right now, is keeping and retaining their employees and getting good ones. And then how do you grow within your own company? And certainly communication is one of those tools, for sure. But so, we do talk a lot about customer retention. And so tell me how you feel like your app has helped your company with customer retention.
So what we do is we start creating lifelong customers, because one thing that happens in the construction industry is you have a project done and then that's kind of the life cycle of that customer. But chances are they know other people. Chances are they didn't do all the work, but you go on your way and they go on their way. And a lot of times they had, just a good enough experience that they're not unhappy with it, but they're not through the roof. And what we do by creating lifelong customers, that's now a database. They can now go back in there and say, hey, I was really happy with the guy that did my kitchen. I wonder if he does garage renovations, but I don't remember who he was. I've changed phones since then. I've
Yeah.
lost his information. I met him on Facebook. Now you can go right into Nutnest, pull up your kitchen renovation, reach right out to that contractor and say, hey, I got a garage renovation. Is that something you do?
Yeah.
And you have a record of that. And then that contractor also has a record. So they're not just getting a random message from somebody. They're getting that information saying, oh, hey, this was John. We did their kitchen. It was a full renovation. he can respond and say, "Hey, John, man, how are those blue cabinets? I know we were kind of on the fence when we did them, but I hope you're enjoying them. I'm not the guy for garage
Right.
renovations,
But
but I
here's the
know a guy."
guy. That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
that's
so
clever.
we
Yeah.
start creating those lifelong customers in a referrer network to where it kind of gets built in from creating that amazing communication experience.
Yeah, yeah, that's certainly very, very clever. And especially, your industry is certainly a high ticket industry. I mean, somebody who does a kitchen and that's definitely somebody you want to have contacts you over and over. Tells the aunt, tells the cousin, etc.
Yeah.
I think too the other aspect of that is it also gives you on your end an opportunity to reach out to. You don't always have to wait for that customer to reach out to you. You can send out whatever promotions you have going on or new services that you now offer that you didn't offer when they first, came into contact with you.
Yeah, and what's amazing, I would listen to the podcast that you did on customer retention, and you talked about that lifetime value of a customer. That's something people should know. And then when you know that, the average if you deliver and do what you say you're going to do, the average person will refer the statistics on that. It's 2.68 people to you. So you can take that dollar value of that
Uh-huh.
lifelong customer and multiply that by 2.68 as long as you're delivering on what you're saying you're doing.
100%.
And that's an amazing number and an amazing statistic that a lot of people don't think about. And I loved hearing you talk about lifelong customer value, because I don't think enough people talk about that.
They don't.
And that is something that when you get into that referrer business and creating lifelong customers, you can start adding multitudes to that. And that lifelong customer value just keeps going up and up and up. And the sky's really the limit.
Yeah, I think as business owners, we sometimes are so conditioned to just keep focusing on getting more customers. And I'm like, if you focus on taking care of the customers you have now, well, first of all, it's a lot easier to sell to somebody who already knows you. So that part right there, you've already increased your odds by almost 60%. But it is a way to also get referrals nonstop. It's lead based. So if you really take care of the people that have used you in the past or use you currently, your business will grow exponentially. Really, I don't want to say no effort, because the effort goes into taking care of the folks you have now, but you're not constantly looking for new people over and over and over and over. That just takes so much time and energy that isn't always beneficial.
Yeah, because not only are you retaining that customer, they're bringing in more customers to you. And that's an amazing cycle to have happen. And I think we get very transactional about everything, is like everything becomes very transactional. But if we would just take a moment to understand what is the lifetime value of this customer, and then what is that multiplication on that 2.68, what does that look like when you start talking big picture and then multiplying that by years?
Yeah.
The numbers grow fast, and you can practically scale a business by just doing that and
Yeah.
doing it well.
And I think the other thing is I'm clearly very lucky because the industry that I'm in is one that is, although it's a transaction, it is also something way beyond that. And I watch kids from infant up until they're ready to go to middle school. So there is a very special relationship that happens
Yep.
between me and my customer that maybe doesn't happen in every industry. So I'm very lucky. And I think I just have such a good understanding of that relationship and the importance of relationships in a business. And so I think that's kind of my probably the hill I'll die on, if you will. Like take care of your people, and your people are your employees and your customers, right? Which is kind of why I ended up going a little south with the employees, but it is so important because you need those good, happy employees who are in the loop to maintain happy customers. I can't do it alone. you can't do it alone, right? You need your team,
Yeah.
right? So that's really important. So what are a few before we, start to wrap it up, what are a few things, or is there anything you think that I missed that you really want to leave with the listeners?
So I think that what you're saying about being lucky isn't, you're probably not as lucky as you think you are. You know what you're doing and you're doing the right thing. Because how many of your competitors open up and close all the time? And you've been able to continue to grow. That's proof that taking care of the customer, taking care of your employees, no matter what industry you're in, has value. Because when you're in a very personal industry like you are, you're going to naturally have that emotion or connection. But there's people that fail at it all the time. It's not, it can become very transactional. So
Yeah.
I think if you stick with being clear about what you're talking about in the communication aspect, make sure you have that platform, whether it's going to be over the phone, email, text message, the Nutnest platform, if you're in the construction industry, making sure you have that singular point that communication is going through, and then providing consistent updates, whether that's for your customers, for your employees, or anybody that's involved, keeping everybody in the loop with exactly what's going on. You do those three things and you do those at a high level, you create lifelong customers. You will have that customer retention, you will have that refer, and your business will help just grow itself.
Thank you. Um, so, and again, customer service is also extremely important. And so when you have all these pieces in place, it just naturally helps you provide the best customer service. And like you said, um, not, I guess not everybody really focuses on those details. And it is those little details, that one little extra thing that you do, like you said, maybe it's that video or the photo of, here's the 4 options of tile you have today, Miss Jones, right? It's those little details that make or break your business.
Yeah,
And yeah.
absolutely.
And so I would say if there's anything you could get from this podcast would be definitely one, figure out what's the best way to communicate with both your employees and your customers. Number 2, like stay in the details, keep it clear as Ron said here, keep it clear and concise. Think about too not only what the message is, but the way you deliver it, especially if it's in person. Um, watch your body language, watch your tone, be courteous. um listen, if anything, leadership and listen, those are 2 L's that are really important. So I would say that. So I want to thank you so much for being such a great guest. Could you please just give our listeners your contact info, that way if they're in construction and they want to find out a little bit more about your app and your platform and your company, they can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great being here today. You can find more information about Nutnest and what we do at nutnest.com. Ron Nussbaum on LinkedIn is the best way to connect with me. And I would love to have a conversation with anybody that wants to talk about communication, whether you're in the construction industry or not. If you want to have a demo of our software, I'd be more than happy to show it to you.
Sounds great. And if you need help putting together some type of communication tool or platform, if you're not in construction, you want something a little more customized for your business, give us a ring or reach out to us at www.stellabusinessconcepts.com. Or if you want to put together a strategic planning meeting for your employees so that you can get everyone on the same page with the same vision and goal, give us a shout out. We would love to work with you. So that's it. It's Practical Biz Podcast. We are tuning out for the day.